I can think of 4 very good ways to start collecting Adepta Sororitas. We'll be going over the 4 boxes that will start you off, but I think the first way is the best way. It can be a starting point by itself, or it can be a jumping off point before you go into one of the other ways. And that is to get 1 unit and 1 character. Whatever unit you want, whatever character you want. And then you can see how you feel about the models. You'll probably be picking your favorite models after all. If you're not sure about the army, because, you don't know what the models are like, you don't know how it is to build them, it's surprisingly difficult actually. You don't know exactly how they play on the tabletop, you don't want to start with a massive box of everything just because it seems like a value discount box. The worst feeling is getting loads of sprues and then not liking the models too much, so you end up with a grey pile of shame, an obligation to make these models rather than a desire to. Starting with a character and unit you want will help you get the feel of the army, and that is the best way. Although it may suit you if you're going from kill team into 40k, I don't recommend the novitiate box. Not yet, anyway. But something will have caught your eye with the Adepta Sororitas. There is a reason you are here, kind of interested in starting or growing your sister's army. What model got you interested? Because fundamentally, at its core, deep down inside of you, there will have been that moment, that fire, a fire to purge heretics with. And by the stories or the look of the models, or for me, that feeling of wanting to support some amazing women who were not otherwise supported as a model range, who were excellent, dedicated, not conflicted about the moral grey areas of the galaxy or if the Codex Astartes approved of such actions, but who knew they were chosen by the God Emperor to purge heretics. That is the fire that caught within me. They're not the strongest soldiers in the galaxy, but that won't stop them from being exceptional. So the first models I really loved were the Seraphim, the Battle Sisters, and the Exorcist. You have to try it to test it and see if you love them. I've painted a squad of Fire Warriors and thought they were okay. I quickly painted and converted a Tyranid Warrior Prime recently in a video and was just ready for the next thing. But with Sisters, I thought, why not? Why not have a few more? I loved the unconventional warfare of the Seraphim. Hit and run, firing pistols, not dropping in to fight and kill in combat, or using bombs like the Swooping Hawks, but to shine with the weapons that were a mere sidearm to Space Marines. And then the Exorcist. You know I love to say it, but we are not making a tank weird by putting a mobile missile launcher into a church organ. We are improving a church organ by putting it on a tank and making it fire missiles. Awesome. And then the Battle Sisters. I loved the basic Battle Sisters, although I got in with the metal models rather than the plastic ones. And you know an army is for you when the basic troops look cool. So it wasn't an Immolator or Saint Celestine that got me into Sisters. It was her. Just seeing this model in 2nd edition. The Metal Sister Superior. Holding tightly onto an icon representing her faith, holding it close so she knows it will be alright. That is far more evocative to me than the new Sister Superior holding an icon up to show off her faith. Oh, and she's firing a bolt gun, the coolest 40k gun, in one hand. So after painting them, it felt right. It wasn't just that I felt passionate about them. I remember finishing them and feeling more complete, like I was more myself than before. When no one else cared about Battle Sisters, I was one of the faithful. So, if you have a similar sort of feeling and think you could be happy self-described as a Battle Sister player, then we can move on to part 2. A follow-on, but also a different way to start collecting Adepta Sororitas. Getting a big box of them. Despite, in theory, being a limited edition set, the Army of Faith Battle Force is still available in a lot of places, including at Firestorm Games, which will deliver to the UK and Europe. This box gives you many of those wonderful Seraphim and a glorious Exorcist. You have a Jump Cannoness as the leader, and those Seraphim can also be built as Zephyrim, so you could have 3 units of Zephyrim, or 3 units of Seraphim, or a mix and match of each. What you could do is get this box and then get a Battle Sisters box after that, because the Battle Sisters box has 10 models and costs about the same as the box that gives you 5 Seraphim. Not that you would need more Seraphim, but the Seraphim box, which you get 3 of in the Army of Faith set, that comes with 10 jump packs and enough weapons to equip 10 models, because it has to be able to build 5 Seraphim with all their various arms, or 5 Zephyrim with their different arms and their banner. So with a Battle Sister squad, you can make 10 more Seraphim or Zephyrim using parts from just this Battle Force box. So you can have, 25 Seraphim/Zephyrim. They're fielded in squads of 5 or 10, so if you wanted them all to be Seraphim, well, you wouldn't quite have enough parts. But that's a lot of jump pack ladies. And if you think, oh, I like the Army of Faith with the many shenanigans you can do with jump pack units, this is of course your best place to start. It's called the Army of Faith Battle Force because it's meant to be for the Army of Faith detachment. It'll work in any detachment though. You don't need to love the jump pack units or exclusively want to go with this detachment. And you do get the best tank. I know some people may say, oh, but the Rhino is so ubiquitous and useful. Oh, but the Castigator is currently good in the meta. Doesn't matter, it's not a church organ that fires missiles. Is it? No! Exorcist is. I have fired my Exorcist 167 times, and it gets more fun every time I fire it. What this box doesn't give you are the core of the army, the Battle Sisters, but that would be a next step rather than a first place to start with your Battle Sisters army. If you want the jump pack Canoness, the Canoness with the jump pack, with the hand flamer or the halberd or the eviscerator, currently, at time of recording, the only way to get that model is in this Army of Faith box. Alternatively, you can kit bash your own, and that is what I recommend that you do. So maybe that one Seraphim box is the one box you started this journey off with? Then you will have enough flight stands and backpacks to turn any Battle Sister model into a jump pack Canoness. The next way to start the Battle Sisters is much easier to get a hold of and more likely to be in stock, including in future years. That is the Combat Patrol set. The new one is good, and I think it is better than the older one, although not too many people agree with me on that. Little bit controversial. You could try and get the older Combat Patrol, they may have some somewhere second hand. That gives you a lot of useful models, but those Battle Sisters are monopose. You can only build them with that loadout. Now if you have another box set, such as Seraphim, such as regular Battle Sisters, you could use parts that are spare from those boxes to convert those monopose sisters. It'll just take some effort. What you have is bodies with legs and a head. If you can remove the arms, or not build the arms, then you can have different kind of weapon options and you could make Dominions or you could make more Seraphim. I have some problems with the old Combat Patrol box, but I'll leave that to the end where I'll link the next video. Having the Combat Patrol set lets you use the Combat Patrol game mode, a very basic game mode to learn 40k. So if the Adepta Sororitas was your first army, the Combat Patrol is a good place to start because it also teaches you the rules of 40k. But you could do Combat Patrol missions at 500 point levels with any kind of Battle Sister units, just to get you going. I do like the Adepta Sororitas Combat Patrol, and there are ways to get it cheaper than going through Games Workshop. If you live in the United States, you can use my link to the Wargames portal, which gives you 10% off compared to going through Games Workshop. If you're in the UK or Europe, Firestorm Games will deliver your Combat Patrol at 12% off. In Canada, Fenris Workshop is the place I recommend for 10% off the Combat Patrol, and if you are in New Zealand or Australia, 21% off with Gap Games. That's where you want to go to be getting your Combat Patrol, and in theory, any of these boxes. With the Combat Patrol set, you could get 2 of these boxes if you know that you like the Adepta Sororitas. Much as I like you using my affiliates who pay me a little bit of money in return when you use those links, I think it's better if you just buy one, see how you do, and then buy a second one if you really like it. Because the Battle Sisters in this box can also be built as Dominions. You get those weapons on the kit. And the Canoness could be built to represent a Palatine. Don't use the back icon, have the head tilted another way, and you have a slightly different silhouette. But recently, and perhaps only for a short time, there is another way to start collecting the Adepta Sororitas, and that is to get the Agents of the Imperium Hereticus box set. This gives you Greyfax, a Missionary, 10 Battle Sisters which can also be built as Dominions, and an immolator. This is the only way to get a discounted immolator. You also get the allies units of the Adeptus Arbiters and some Inquisitorial Acolytes. Or Inquisitorial Agents as they're now called. In the Agents of the Imperium book. Where they're yeah, these men, these people, that's what you get. Now the 10 Arbiters could be built as Subductors, which is where they have the riot shields and the mauls. Then if you paint them in your sister's colours, you could have Celestian Sacrosants with shields. You can use spare Battle Sister heads that you got in the Battle Sisters box, which comes in that same Battle Force, because the Battle Sisters box provides 20 heads for 10 sisters. That way you don't need to buy Celestian Sacrosants separately. Depending on how good they are in battles, you could use them as Subductors, or you could use them as Celestian Sacrosants. It depends if you want the Miracle Dice benefit, or to have big people with riot shields. 10 Subductors cost slightly more than 5 Sacrosants, but that is like 10 models compared to 5, and they have the same defensive profile. It just depends if you really want Miracle Dice and to be able to have your characters join those units. The dog and the little floating vox could be used to represent cherubs for when you split your Battle Sister squad, because when you put a Battle Sister squad in an immolator, it splits, and the ability is tied to the unit, not to the cherub. So both squads of 5 will get the cherub ability. In your Celestian Sacrosant / Subductor unit, if you want your leader to have a hand flamer, or the Sister Superior from the squad to have a hand flamer, then use the one from the agent's unit. Having a hand flamer there doesn't do anything for that agent in 40k, they have generic weapons. And if you wanted a model to be representing a Battle Sister Canoness with a jump pack and Eviscerator, the agent's Eviscerator is there. And if you wanted another priest, one of the Inquisitorial agents can be built to look like a missionary. In this set, you also get Inquisitor Greyfax, great for theming around the Adepta Sororitas. She can join the Subductor team, or she could join the Inquisitorial Acolytes. Then you'll probably want Celestine, because you have Greyfax. Now they don't do anything on the tabletop together. Actually, it may be bad, because Greyfax gets distracted, and Celestine will be like, "Do you think she saw me kill all those heretics?" Yeah, I think she saw me. So that is the third big box set you can get to start your Adepta Sororitas journey. After you've got a box and a character that started off your journey. But now we go into the what comes next. I recommend getting a Novitiate box, because from the Novitiate box, you can build all sorts of models. Never buy characters directly from Games Workshop because they are absurdly expensive for one-off models. As soon as you're buying 2 characters, you were better off buying a Novitiate box. And with that, you can use a Sacred Banner to represent an Magifier. You get a Mistress of Repentance, which could be used to join, say, an Archoflagellant squad, and you can say, actually, these are a Repentia squad. Can't you tell? Because we have a Mistress of Repentance, and we have a Battle Sister with an Eviscerator. You have a Dialogus-looking sister. The Sister Superior of the Novitiate team could be used to represent a Canoness or a Palatine. And you have a Hospitaller sister. I have done exactly that, and it works really well in terms of money saving. Well, you're still spending money, but comparably spending less money. And remember to get your Battle Sisters from my affiliates. Cheaper than Games Workshop. The only issue I can see coming up is on base sizes. These models, apart from the Superior, are on 28mm bases, while a lot of the Battle Sister characters are on 32mm bases, and for some reason, the Hospitaller is on the huge 50mm base. That's because Games Workshop is selling you a diorama more than a model. I don't think base size matters too much. Some people are purists and think the Games Workshop have invested a lot of thought into what kind of model should have what kind of base, and it's going to make loads of in-game difference. But I think a 50mm base that's 12 inches away is gonna be the same as a 28mm base that's also 12 inches away. It makes very little in-game difference, but if you plan to go to tournaments, then you will need to buy different bases to put those models on. Okay, that's Novitiates, very good idea. Then, get a unit you like. Because if you've gone through a big box and maybe you didn't love everything that's in there, maybe the immolator was a bit of a pain for you to paint with the stained glass windows, get a unit you like. If you don't keep getting units you want, then you're going to run out of steam and go, I don't actually like this army anymore. I don't want to build or buy anything more, which is totally valid. But if you want to keep going and get a bigger army, buy something you want. Even if it seems bad in the meta will probably change before you get to play them on the tabletop. Points change every 3 months, and the rules are tweaked a little or a lot every 6 months. The Adepta Sororitas have been doing quite well since their codex released. Before that they were average, before that at the end of 9th edition they were doing really badly. It's always the up and down. So get units that you like. There's a different way to expand further. You may be able to get second-hand Imperium magazines. Now that should have finished its run everywhere, and it's been replaced in the UK by the Combat Patrol magazine. There are no sisters in that, but lots of people bought the Imperium magazine as a subscription, so they got everything, even if they were not Adepta Sororitas players. So secondhand, you should be able to get some Adepta Sororitas models through the Imperium magazine. Alright, we have come this far, so let's fulfill the promise of the thumbnail, getting to 1000 points. I am not looking at tactics today, and as I just said, these points values will change, but it's the boxes that get you there. These army lists will give you a rough idea of the amount of models it takes to get to 1000 points. Because those points change often, it's better when you're making your own army lists and not just copying these, that you want to be a little bit under, then you can bring it up with enhancements on your characters. So for our first list, we started with a box of Battle Sisters and Saint Celestine. Then we have the Army of Faith box. From the Army of Faith box, we made a unit of 5 Zephyrim and 10 Seraphim for the jump cannoners to lead. The Exorcists and the Sisters would start on the home objective, which because the Defenders of the Faith ability becomes sticky. We could keep the Exorcist there, firing indirectly, while the Battle Sisters move on to the next objective. Celestine likes going with the Zephyrim because they can get her into combat from Deep Strike. They have a Sacred Banner that allows them to reroll charges. You don't even need the Deep Strike. You could just move really quickly up the board and then still reroll your charge. Now this army is working with the Army of Faith detachment because that gives you loads of bonuses to your jump pack troops. When you use a stratagem on them, depending on the stratagem, it also affects other units nearby, including other jump pack units. But this detachment could also work with the Bringers of Flame because the Fire and Fury enhancement is a lovely one to have on the Canoness with the Seraphim who also have Hand Flamers. To finish off the army, 2 boxes of 10 Novitiates, and we would have them, in theory, as Novitiates. But you could assemble one set to resemble characters and have the other with spare jump packs and the Zephyrim weapons. Now you have a unit that could represent Zephyrim or represent the pistols and Novitiate melee weapons. Why would Novitiates have jump packs? Why, to infiltrate against the enemy. They have the infiltrate special rule. The Tempestor Scions weren't the only ones taught about grav insertion at the Scholia Progenium. For list number 2, I started with a Castigator and a Priest. I keep calling them missionaries or preachers, like in the index, but they are now in the codex Ministorum Priests. And I would buy the one with the Vindictor, this lady. After that, 2 of the brand new Combat Patrols. This gives us the Canoness, who can have the Mantle of Ophelia to make her more resistant to death. 10 Sacrosants out of the 2 sets of 5 Sacrosants you get across the 2 Combat Patrols. 1 unit of Battle Sisters built as Battle Sisters. 1 unit of the Battle Sisters would be built as Dominions. All of the parts are there in the box. The second Canoness, because we've got 2 of them out of our 2 Combat Patrols, they could be turned into a Palatine. And we got the Priest because they can lead Arcoflagellants. Arcoflagellants like having +1 to wound, which the Priest naturally gives them. And we have another set of 10 Arcoflagellants running around hitting things, but slightly less effectively than the one with the Priest. And the Castigator provides the firepower. The Hallowed Martyrs detachment is what works best with this because of the amount of combat we have, and casualties are inevitable when we have Toughness 3 Sacrosants or naked Arcoflagellants. The units get better in the Hallowed Martyrs detachment when they take casualties. This is too combat heavy for the Bringers of Flame detachment, and there are not enough combat units for the Penitent host. What you could do to expand this army further is get Novitiates so that you could use some of the Arcoflagellants as Repentia, because you then have a Mistress of Repentance and a sister with an Eviscerator, so it looks right. For list 3, using the Bringers of Flame detachment, I started with Saint Celestine and her Wing Women and a unit of Seraphim. Then the Hereticus Battle Force. Remember, if you wanted, you could convert one of the Acolytes into a Jump Canoness. That is why we got the Seraphim box, so we have spare backpacks to do that. I haven't in this list though. So the Immolator splits the squad of Battle Sisters into 2 units of 5. 5 of them go with the Priest in the Immolator, and they have all of the Flamer weapons, and they will be able to take objectives and kill the enemy. The other half of the squad takes the home objective and then moves on to other objectives after the Defenders of the Faith makes it yours, in theory, forever. The Priest has Righteous Rage, which gives them even more attacks, because they have an ability to give themselves even more attacks once per game. It's a shame that this is the model that doesn't have the Vindictor, but with parts from the Battle Sister box for, say, the Combi Flamer, you could make one out of them all. Saint Celestine can act alone with her 2 Gemini. Especially at 1000 points, she's difficult to take down. Between her high armor save and invulnerable save, and of course being able to use Miracle Dice on either of them. The Seraphim are very speedy in the Bringers of Flame, because they can move 12 inches, advance and still shoot with this detachment, and then they can move again after shooting. That's a lot of distance they can cover. Greyfax could be with her Inquisitorial agents. They give a bit more defense if they are led by an Inquisitor, or Inquisitor Greyfax could go with the other half of the Battle Sisters if you so wished. We got the 10 Sacrosants by using the Subductors with the shields, and then just using Battle Sister heads to make them look more Battle Sister related. But if you had a larger army and you wanted to pay a few fewer points, they could be used as Subductors as well. So that is 810 points. Then to finish the army and get to 1000 points, I added 10 Dominions and a Rhino. This detachment likes transports, but it can work very well without them. With the Dominions instead, what you could do is put the Sacrosants in the Rhino to have them transported to an objective, then in the next turn get out and charge, while the Dominions could be split by the Immolator, then you have more special weapons to go with the Priest. This could leave Greyfax to lead the 10 Battle Sisters. There are a lot of different ways that you could assign the characters to units in this army. If you have enjoyed this video, if it has been useful and given you the focus you needed, please go to the Ko-fi link in the description and click the tip button to send me some money. You are the reason I have this channel and can keep it running. I haven't gone too far into how to play these 1000 point armies, that is in another video. Oh yes, and comparing the old Combat Patrol to the new Combat Patrol so you can get more information on that as a purchase. My darlings and viewers, I hope you feel that joyous fire burning within yourself. Have a great day of 40k.